The real estate industry changed forever on Friday when the National Association of Realtors came to an agreement to change the way that the industry is structured and the tying between brokers' fees on the buyer side and the seller side. I think that creates a massive opening for Zillow to become the aggregator in the $52 trillion US housing market. Now, this is not a disruption that's going to happen overnight, but this is why this is one of the companies that is in the asymmetric portfolio, because I think the upside potential is well over 10x for a company like Zillow if they're able to become the go-to place for everything from rentals to mortgages to finding and selling homes. That's the upside for Zillow. So I want to dig into exactly what was announced on Friday and how Zillow is going to play a role in this in the future. My name is Travis Hoium. Thanks for watching Asymmetric Investing. Please subscribe here on YouTube for all my content. And thanks to this video sponsor, The Motley Fool. If you go to fool.com/ASYM, they'll give you their top 10 stocks to buy right now. So let's go to first the stock reaction, because I thought this was really interesting. This was Zillow's stock movement on Friday, and right here is when this announcement that I'll cover in just a second came out, and you can see that this stock dropped 13.5%. And I think the reason is what investors are thinking, at least short term, is that agents are going to have pressure on their fees that they're going to be able to charge when they sell a home, whether you're on the buyer side or the seller side. And the reason that Zillow is going to be impacted is those agents are actually the ones who are spending money on Zillow to basically advertise their services. So there could actually be an impact on Zillow because their business model is based on advertising from agents. But I want to go through why strategically this is actually good news for Zillow long term. This is the announcement from the National Association of Realtors, resolves nationwide claims brought by home sellers. The court found that agents were colluding to basically keep fees high at generally around 6%. And what they agreed to is basically to prohibit brokers from offering compensation on the MLS. The MLS, or multiple listing service, is basically a members only place to find homes that are listed for sale. So it's not accessible generally by you or me if you were not a real estate broker. And then to be part of this club, be on the MLS, you had to agree to terms of the MLS that generally included having a fee for a buyer's agent. So this is how you had the tying between the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. Put those two together and you can keep the fees overall very high. So they've agreed to prohibit that, which is going to mean that the buyer's agents are going to have to now negotiate directly with the client that they're working with. So instead of just getting 3%, and it was kind of at the transaction level, wasn't really something that the buyer actually saw, they're actually now going to see that fee and go, wow, if I'm buying a $500,000 house, is the person that's doing this work for me really worth $15,000? Or am I doing a lot of this searching myself on a company like Zillow? Maybe they're not worth $15,000. Maybe I'd be willing to pay $1,000 or $2,000 for some help with some paperwork, but I can do most of this work myself. I think that's really the debate right now, is what's going to happen from the buyer side. The seller is going to be the same thing. Does the 6% fee stay if that is not tied to the buyer's agent? Now the seller broker just gets a 6% fee. I think that could ultimately change too. So a lot of potential changes coming. That is the biggest rule change, and that will impact the entire industry. I don't think that's in question. It's just we don't know exactly what the impact is going to be and what sort of standards are going to be in the future. So this is the reason this is important for Zillow specifically. Zillow has been building for a while what they call the housing super app. And this is the graphic that they use to say, here's all the pieces of the home acquisition process. You have the seller's agent, the buyer's agent, the inspector, the mortgage lender, the appraiser, title company, escrow, and the moving company. So all of these things are very complicated. Generally, if you're buying a home, a buyer's agent is probably going to help you with at least some, if not all of these things. So that would be one of the arguments for the buyer's agent actually having some value. But they don't have to do those things for you, and they don't do them for you in all cases. I bought a home without a buyer's agent. I did all of these things myself, and it really wasn't that hard. So what they have said is our solution is the housing super app. Now remember, this presentation is from earlier this year in 2024, but this is a concept that they have been building for quite a while. So what they're trying to say is we want to be the place that you can find everything. A landlord if you're renting, an agent if you're looking to buy a house, an agent if you're looking to sell a house, financing, moving services, all kinds of things. We're going to be the platform that sits in the middle between these services and the customer. And that's ultimately Zillow's Vision is being a platform company and now you start to disrupt the housing industry, because instead of the housing supply being locked into the MLS, into this fee structure, now you have potentially choice. Where are you going to list your home? If you had to pick one place to list your home, where are you going to list it? I think a lot of buyers would pick Zillow as the one place that they would list it. So sellers agents probably want to list homes on Zillow, but does that also mean that people will start just listing their homes themselves on Zillow? I think that could potentially be something that happens. Zillow could also play a role in connecting those buyers that don't have a buyer's agent with homes. So maybe Zillow generates more value by being a more integral part of the ecosystem. Maybe people start using Zillow to find more financing. Ultimately, if you break this tie between the seller's agent and the buyer's agent and the power that they have always had in the housing market in the US, that opens up an opportunity for an aggregator to come into the market. And that's exactly what Zillow is. That's exactly what Zillow is building. And I think ultimately that's the upside for the company. Thanks to our friends at The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/ASYM for the top 10 stocks to buy right now. What is the evidence that Zillow can be that aggregator, can have that position in the market where no matter who you are, whether you're a seller or a buyer, you're going to go to Zillow as the first place for information? Well, look at the number of unique visitors per ComScore. Facebook, aggregator. Spotify, aggregator. LinkedIn and Netflix, both aggregators, both very, very profitable businesses. Zillow sits here in the middle, massive, massive market, but it doesn't have a great business model because you aren't listing homes directly on Zillow. You're not doing a lot of these things directly on Zillow. They make money from advertising. So it's like kind of like a backdoor way to actually build a business in the housing market, as long as the current structure is in place. Once that current structure breaks, which we saw on Friday, I think that opens up Zillow to build a much, much bigger business. There are other points of evidence that Zillow is already a leader in this space. This is Zillow and the number of searches. You can look at that versus Realtor.com or Redfin. But here's the other thing, and this is what I've been most impressed with Zillow over the past couple of years, is the growth in the rentals space. If Zillow becomes the place that you go to, whether you want to rent a home, whether you want to rent an apartment or a home or buy a home, now suddenly this is the go-to place for all sorts of housing. And this is where Zillow has grown their business tremendously, and this is a pretty profitable business. So if this continues to grow, and then you combine that with being the housing aggregator for home sales and purchases, now you can start adding all kinds of tools like leases, payments, mortgages, moving services, all kinds of things that Zillow could potentially do. So this is the super app for housing that is their vision. And I think the ruling on Friday was really a key to getting there. Now, there's a lot of work to get from where we are today in Zillow's current business and where we could potentially be in the future, where people who are listing homes just go directly to Zillow. You maybe do a scan of your home that you could do within the Zillow app. That helps you price your home. You're integrating all kinds of services together from a housing perspective. And Zillow does become this super app that people are using all the time, the way that other apps become sort of the verb in their industry. But it takes a long time to get from here to there, especially in the housing market where things generally move very slowly. Remember that Netflix launched streaming in 2007. It wasn't really for another decade until it was really, really clear that Netflix was the clear winner in streaming and that none of these other companies were really going to be able to compete with the scale that they had already built. So the value for investors was getting in on that train early. And I think the same thing is going to be the case for Zillow. Zillow is clearly in the lead. I think that's without question. There are definitely other players in the market to keep an eye on. CoStar, Redfin. We'll see who else comes up. But Zillow has aggregated most of the power and most of the user attention in the housing market. They're gaining users from a rental side. They're growing in the housing side faster than the housing industry overall, which is actually in decline right now. So I think these are really, really good signs for Zillow becoming that aggregator position. And ultimately, that's how you're going to get to a much, much bigger business than they have today and a much more profitable business. So this is one of the reasons I'm excited about Zillow and the breaking the tie between buyer's agents and sellers agents, which looks like it's going to happen because of collusion, as the US legal system found, is a great sign for the company. But what do you think about Zillow today? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to Asymmetric Investing. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.